Hi there, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. I truly believe that sometimes a single insight can completely change your business directions and allow you to achieve your business goals. In this episode, I interview Rick Gillis, an author of Leveling the Playing Field. Rick, in his book, Rick walked us through a Quotient system, a new way of measuring a staff performance. In an era of remote work, I had several discussions with the business leaders over the last few months. And, most business leaders are looking for, how do they measure staff performance and the productivity when everybody's work from home. The old way of measuring, performance, by time clock or by hours, that system just not, they just didn't work in a remote work environment. So most of the business leaders looking for a new way of measuring it, new way to get a handle on productivity and accountability. Rick introduced a new way of measuring this performance, and I think my discussion with Rick should provide insight to you. Maybe another option that your organization has been looking for, how to measure staff performance, which is good for staff and for leadership team and for the company as well. So I think you're really going to enjoy the discussion. It should provide a new perspective how to measure this staff performance and how to reward staff based on the value they add to the business. So if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, enjoy. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Rick Gillis. Rick's author of a new book, Leveling the Playing Field. Rick's very interesting book. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm looking forward to learning from your book and looking forward to learning from you.
Thank you, Jermaine. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate you said it right. You don't know how many times I hear leveling the playing field.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's leveling the playing field. And I'm very proud of that title. I came up with it 2 weeks before we finished the master edit. Wow. So, and it says what I wanted to say.
Well, I can tell you, very interesting concept. You introducing a new concept in the market, and it definitely, I'm looking forward to learning actually, how this concept came along. So walk us through what made you write this book, and how do you get to this point where you thought there was a need for writing this book?
Wow, that's a lot of question, and I'll try to keep this brief. I will tell you my history. This whole thing was a God wink. I was directed here, and I didn't plan on any of this. Back in 1997, I helped launch the very first job board in Houston, Texas. It was two guys that owned it. I was employee number one. We worked out of their dining room in their little townhouse, and we were very, very successful. I mean, outrageously successful. And the reason for that is not because we were so good, although we were, I have to say. It's because the Houston Chronicle, the local newspaper, declared that the internet was a fad. It was just a fad. It was going to go away. And I had no competition out there on the street for almost 15, 18 months. And so we wrapped up Houston, which is a very, very big city. We're the fourth largest city in the United States. And but here's the thing. As I was selling to the HR, staffing, hiring community, what I was learning there was not what I was hearing when I was going to job ministry support and job search support meetings. Okay. So I took it upon and especially with the new internet, this changed everything. So the dynamics were different, of course. So that started me writing my first book. And what I didn't really write a book as such. I took the PowerPoint I had developed, and each chapter was like a header from my PowerPoint. I would just tell the stories I had been telling, and I wrote it all out. That book did pretty well. And Jeff Bezos had just invented self-publishing. So that led to 4 books on job search, because every year or two, the dynamics would change, the software would change, all that stuff. And so I've kept writing books on job search. So my job search optimized book is still available on Amazon. I wrote a book called Promote, and the subtitle is what I should have called the book. Your work does not speak for itself, you do. That's the best subtitle, and it should have been the title of the book. And I say that a lot. I say that in the new book. Because that book is for people to help them promote themselves while they're on the job as opposed to job search. Anyway, long story short, all of this came to a place where I was working with clients from literally all over the world. And invariably, I kept running into senior professionals who could tell me, these were very important people. They had very important jobs. They could tell me what they had done. They could not tell me the value of what that achievement had led to for the organization. And I got tired of hearing on time and under budget. And I said, that's not an accomplishment. That's what you were supposed to be doing. And I started coming up with workarounds to help these people determine a valuation. We didn't have the numbers from the organization. So that led, the more I realized and I started working on this thing, I came up with this idea of the quotient, which I know you're going to want to talk about. So, but the quotient is how I am striving to achieve fair pay parity. And it's also turning into a business model that I'm very pleased to talk about as well.
Wow, very interesting. I haven't read your other books, but this one definitely, got my attention. And then the new concept you mentioning, very often as I hire a lot of employees, I think a lot of people listening to us are business leaders. They hire a lot of employees, and we always struggle with the finding a value. Not everybody's going to deliver the same value in a business. And not every team member is going to deliver the same work. So definitely, this is a unique concept. So walk us through. Let's talk about the concept. Quotient. That's how you pronounce it, right? It's spelled like a QTNT, right?
Spelled QTNT. I actually trademarked that. What I did is I took the word quotient and I removed the vowels.
I see.
So QTNT is disemboweled. But interesting was something you said that I want to go back to. That's really important to me. Everybody in the interview is on their best behavior. You don't really get the person necessarily you're hiring until after you've got 30, 60, 90 days in and you start seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, an interview is a real hard place for a hiring manager to see who they're really getting. You get a lot of it on paper, of course, but I mean, even our resumes are so spotless and so shiny that, you've got to have good questions. That's why, there's background checks and there's all kinds of assessments and all kinds of stuff there too. But nevertheless, that is a hard place to go. But anyway, what the quotient is, and this was, I can tell you where I was. I was riding my bicycle when it hit me. I had the whole idea and it came to me exactly. And I was very amazed later on when I found out that this was not currently in the accounting process. And basically my model is this. It is, I'm a sales guy. I've always been paid on commission. I know where in the pipeline I'm at. I know where I'm going to get paid. I know how much I'm going to make. I know, and Saturday night, I'm still thinking the job. Sunday, I'm still thinking about the job. A person who has a paycheck does not think like that. And my clients were all paycheck clients, and that's hourly or salaried. So Monday through Friday, they're working and they're engaged. But then come Friday afternoon, they leave the job and they turn off and they re-engage Monday morning. I want people to embrace an accomplishments mindset, which is to continue to be thinking, and especially about the value you deliver to your employer. Now, I will admit candidly, that's the hardest part of my process. But the idea is that you take the value of your contribution to your employer. And that means paying attention to what you're doing as you're doing it. And that's what the accomplishments mindset is. But the idea is that every time let's say you save $3,000 on how you close the books, and you share that with your office. Well, that's a gain. That's savings. And by the way, most people most employed people working are not creating value. They're saving money for the organization. It's efficiency, and they need to understand that efficiency is value. So anyway, you add up your contributions over the year, and let's say you and I work together. I pay you $50,000 a year, and mutually, you and me together, or you alone, or me alone, determine you delivered $250,000 in value to the company. That $250,000 then divided by your $50,000 base pay equals 5. That is your quotient. In other words, your quotient, now that's just a term I made up, but the quotient is a factor that says, here's how much value you delivered. It's a score, it's a rank, how much value you delivered to my company. Now you delivered a 5, where your coworker delivered a 3, 3.7. Somebody else in your office delivered a 17. Whoa. This is a person I need to watch. This person is making me a lot of money. So it's a new concept in measurement of value. And here's the thing. And like I said, I admit this is the hardest part, but it's a matter of people determining and paying attention to what they do as they do it. Make notes, anything, especially any evaluations. So at the end of the year, performance review time, or monthly, weekly, whenever, you can discuss the value you have delivered to your employer. And that's a brand new concept. And candidly, it's not easy. So the salesperson's point of view is the accomplishments mindset. And that is what delivers the quotient.
I see. Okay. So let me play it back. So what we're simply saying is we're building a value numbers for every employee in a company. We're simply taking how much value this person or employee added to the company and then divided that by that base salary. That will give you the numbers. It could be 3 times, could be 2, could be 11, could be 10, whatever the number is. That's a value, the quotient number we're talking about. So we use that number to for many different reasons, and I know for appraisal or many different ways, right?
For ranking, yes. And let me tell you what, there's actually 3 outcomes to the quotient. Well, there's 4. One is a Q equal 1. That's a quotient of quotient of 1. That means you're making exactly and only what you need to keep your job. And I tell people that if you've been on the job for more than a year, your quotient is greater than 1 already. You've been kept, you're making value, you're adding value to the company. So you're okay. So you got a Q equal 1. A Q of greater than 1, a quotient of greater 1 means that you're adding value or saving money to the organization. A Q less than 1 means you're probably on your way out the door. Now, there is also a Q exempt for some positions. For instance, a CEO's executive assistant is maybe making 120 grand because this person has been there for 20 years, knows where all the skeletons are buried. That person's worth a lot of money, much more than another admin assistant. Mm-hmm. But so that is a quotient exempt. Because so that's when you go to the finance committee, the salary committee, and you make a determination that yes, this person's worth that, whatever. But a Q equal 1 is what you have to make minimum to keep your job. A Q greater than 1 means you're adding value to the organization. A Q less than 1, you're marginal or you're on your way out the door. And so those are factors. Let me tell you what, Jeremy, this is important. In the book, I have 14 Q studies. Mm-hmm. A Q study is a step-by-step story of 14 different people I actually worked with and how we developed their quotient. And I have those in there to illustrate to the reader how I came up with these numbers. Okay. One of them, and I remember his real name is Jeff. I call him Alan in the book, but it doesn't matter. You can't find him anyway. He had a quotient of 571. His salary was $94,000 a year. He was a senior construction supervisor, and he had saved millions of dollars on this gigantic construction project. And it was an amazing story. But the bottom line is, when we ran his numbers and he delivered 571 times more than he was being paid, that man's entitled to a promotion, a raise, a bonus, everything. Yeah. And the fact is, he actually is now, at that time, he was with another company. He is now reporting to the CEO using my accomplishments model to present best practices throughout the corporation he's with. It's one of the biggest companies down in the southeastern United States. Mm-hmm. And so he's actually using the quotient in his business. And I'm very proud of that.
Okay. So very interesting. So let's talk about what determines the value. You mentioned a few times how much money we're saving. Is it only on a saving or also generating more revenue? How do you assess the value? The business leaders, they could be saying, hey, I rather care, saving money, I may not be, so keen about, but can I test that on somebody adding more to my top line, which is revenue? Can they help me generate more revenue? So how do you assess the value? That could be different for every role, I guess, how you assess the value.
No question about it. And I'll tell you what, at the very end of the book, I actually have a request that anybody who reads the book who wants to reach out to me and possibly co-write a book for their vertical, their industry, healthcare, retail, whatever, because I don't know those industries. Mine is kind of the basis, the touchstone to start all those other stories. Okay. Anybody who sells something, anybody who generates revenue, they're easy to calculate. That's it. Because see, I've always been that person. And I know if I'm not generating revenue for the company, if they're paying me a base or a commission, well, if it's a commission, it's a wash. If I don't make money, you don't pay me. Mm-hmm. But if I'm getting a base salary and I'm not making my minimums and making then enough more to get a bonus, a commission, I'm not doing well enough. You're going to get rid of me. So sales, really, anybody who generates revenue, that kind of takes care of itself, genuinely. Mm-hmm. It's the people. But the thing is, people who work for a paycheck have never really been taught to realize that they add value to a company. And that therein lies the problem. Because, I make up the story. Let's say that, as a matter of fact, I've used this story in my live speaking, and I think it's somewhere similar in the book. Let's say that you came up with it. You and I we work in a pool of accounting professionals. Okay. And you came up with a way of closing the books 15 minutes early a day. And, and everybody starts noticing, wow, how did Jeremy finish? How are you finished? We're still working. What's the deal?
Yeah.
And you go, well, I did this and I did this. And you start sharing that. And the other 8 people in your pool, you show them. And pretty soon, all of you guys, every day at the end of the day, are saving 15 minutes by closing the books early.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what? Most people just put that off to, oh, cool, Jermeet did a great deal. But wait a minute, 15 minutes, that's a quarter of an hour times 8 people. So now we're talking about what, 2 hours of time you have saved. That's time that people can be doing other things and making other revenue for the organization, being more efficient. Now, let's say that you then take that idea and somebody asks you about it, and we take it from your team, your 8 people, and we roll it out across the company, and there's 16 divisions. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, there's 16 divisions saving 2 hours a day. Now we've got man hours. Now we can say, let's say that the average pay rate for those people is 35 an hour. I always say go very conservative. So let's just say 30 an hour times 8 hours times 15 divisions. All of a sudden, you're saving a lot of man hours. But this is a matter of, once again, it's that accomplishments mindset to start thinking out how what you do, how you came up with a better process does impact the bottom line. Because I'll tell you what, and you as an owner, as a supervisor, really pay attention to this, savings are equally as valuable as revenue. Now, revenue makes the engine run, but the most efficient use of those resources is how you stay in business. And that's really where the quotient applies to, creating efficiencies and measuring that. And something I need to tell you that's really important, Jeremy, the quotient is a double-edged sword. It not only points out your winners, the people who are really doing a bang-up job, it also points out those you're overpaying. Because if you have a quotient of a negative, or if, let's say, there's 3 of us on the team and there's only enough payroll for 2, you're going to look at these and you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Rick had a quotient of 7. The other one's had a 23 and a 40. I'm keeping those 2. Rick's out of here. Yeah. So the quotient is a double-edged sword. It's creating an efficiency is what it's doing.
But also it's a beneficial to staff as well. You know, if they know their value, they can negotiate salary, they can find a better employer. So it also works their favor as well, not only for employer, but also for staff as well. If you can talk about that, how can they use this system?
Well, you know, what's interesting is the reason I called the book Leveling the Paying Field, and I need to go back and tell you a quick story because I am very, very personally big on pay parity, overcoming wage disparity. And that's how this quotient thing first kind of hit me. Now it's what's happened. I'm learning it's working in business, and I've got some business friends of mine who have embraced it, who are not using it for pay parity, but for their regular day-to-day operations. When I was 16 years old, I was making more money working in a part-time job after school than my mother was working 5.5 days a week, caring for my brother and I. In fact, let me see, here it is. This little device, I was paid 10, I still have one. I made this year when I was 16 years old. I used to make 600 of these every week. And I was given all the components, and I went home and I assembled them. I had a little machine that put this spring on it. It's a little quick disconnect. So I have kept that thing with me for years and years and years. I was paid 10 cents for every one I assembled. I was required to put 600 together a week. I used to go down and pick up all the barrels, take them home and assemble these things and go back. When we needed more money, my mother and my brother and I would sit down, and the most we ever made in 1 week was 1,600 of these. So we made $160. Sometimes that went to the rent. And no boo-hoo, I'm not making up stories here. We did fine. You know, we survived, we did okay. But I remember that, and I've always kept this thing, and it's really quite amazing that I still have that. That's when I first came into the pay parity thing. My mom should have been paid better than she was for what she was doing. And I know that whole story, and I can tell you details. I won't. But the point is, I am very much in favor of, in the United States, it's equal pay for equal work. That was John Kennedy in 1963. He signed the Equal Pay Act. Fact is, I don't believe as much in the equal pay for equal work as I believe in the proper pay for the best performance, regardless of what that performer looks like. I don't care if it's male, female, of color. It doesn't matter to me. The person who is best performing should get the best money. So that's my model. And then going forward from that, I have realized, and I'm rapidly realizing, and the questions you're asking are directing me more to the business model. And every bit of this works in traditional business.
Wow, very interesting. If you go with this value system, Rick, there's so much discussion about the pay qualities in terms of different genders, ethnicity, and work. So, if you assess on a value system that what you just mentioned, that could put almost end to those discussions that issues we always talk about, that hey, pay quality and all those, because the issues in a workplace, right? So now it's based on a performance and a value to the company, not based on anything else.
No, you're absolutely right. And once again, I'm going to go back to where we started, the very beginning. The hardest part here is that people need to take this concept to heart themselves. Although the company can use this model does work for the branch, the division, the department, the corporation as a whole. It works across. It could be used for a week, a month, a day, the year, whatever. But the individual has to embrace the idea that they deliver value. It's not just going to work. It's not just going to the job. It is actually executing on something, seeing value. And candidly, I think one company that has embraced the Quotient and is using it in their business is a company in Tennessee that I met this woman, the CEO, on a panel that I was speaking at 2 or 3 years ago. And she asked me to speak to her company. At the time, she had 30 employees. And so I did a 1-hour presentation, and so we talked, and but I got so busy with everything else, I didn't follow up. So about a month and a half, 2 months ago, 2 years later, I called her and I said, hey, we haven't talked in a while. How did the Quotient thing work out for your business? And she said, we're killing it. And I said, really? And I said, how? See, when I spoke to her group, including herself, she had 30 employees. She was now up to 45 employees 2 years later. And she was up to 55 employees, and she's getting ready to hire 45 more to bring it up to 100 employees. She is a small little consulting company, but what they have done, they're using this model, the Quotient, to express the value they have created on every contract they've worked on since they were introduced to the model. So if they say that our contract was $350,000, and they generated $3.5 million for the organization, and they work with the organization to get their payback, and they can say, we delivered, they paid 10% for 100% return on value. She's using that in all of her bidding, and she's really doing well. Now, interestingly, I asked her, because I thought about this, and I called her back that afternoon, and I asked if I could get on her calendar again, and she put me on the next morning, and she said, I said, what are your best practices? How are you implementing this? How are you forcing your workers to think like this? And she told me, she said, candidly, senior management gets it. Middle management is they're like, I can force them. And at the bottom, they really don't know quite why they're doing it, but they're doing it because otherwise they're not going to have a job. Yeah. And I thought that was fascinating. So, and I think that's right, because I think when I was younger, I don't know how well I would have been receptive to this idea of paying attention to what I was doing as I was doing it. But that is the clue. That is the key. Pay attention to what you're doing as you're doing it.
I see. Very interesting. So let me talk about business leaders. I know we just coming out of pandemic. Before pandemic, one way of assessing the value was simply looking at time clock. Hey, employees come in at 8 in the morning and they go at 4:30, and that's what business owners wanted. Everybody's coming to office. What happened with the pandemic, we all working from remote location, all the employees at home. Now you can assess by the time clock the value of the employees, right? So you need to assess many different ways. You can log activities, you can log the task they completed and the work they completed. That's one way of assessing it. The time clock model just doesn't exist anymore, because you can't force people to work on a certain hours when they're home, and they're going through a lot of stuff at home as well, personal challenges, financial challenges, or family challenges, right? So
space.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the things they gain out of this remote work is they can work in hours they want to. So it's a little bit more easier for them to manage the family challenges and the work as well. But a challenge it creates for business leaders is that they cannot assess that employee performance based on a time anymore. Now they have to find a different means of assessing it. I know task is one of the items a lot of business leaders use. Hey, I assigned certain tasks to my staff. I just want to make sure that they complete on time those tasks. How does this play for people working from home as well? Looks like with the value system, you can still assess their value even they're working from home or they're working from office. So instead of going on the time clock or activities, you can use this value system to test them.
That's a big question. It's not an easy question to answer. And of course, it does matter the vertical we're talking about, you know, whatever it's, if it's engineering or if it's research or whatever, writing code, whatever. You know, some people, and I know, Jermeet, you'll know what I'm talking about here, and you've had this situation as well. Some people can accomplish a task in an hour. Other people, it might, what you might be able to accomplish in an hour, it might take me 2.5 hours. So it's really a matter of finite accomplishment, verifiable, provable. That is one thing about the quotient. It is defensible, it is conservative, and it is objective. Now that's objective is really a big deal. That's one of the things, and I'm going to kind of turn to the answer here right now, because see, when you get to personal review at the end of the year, work reviews, and you're looking at bonus raises, you know, promotions, etc. It's entirely up to the individual. However, the supervisor can subjectively manipulate that process. And in other words, I don't like you. You're just not going to get a great rating, but the guy next to you who's not as good a worker as you, it happens all the time. And it's been happening for years and years and years. I go drinking with the boss. I play golf with the boss. So other people don't have that advantage. Being objective is a big deal because personal performance reviews are to a large degree subjective, and it's why a lot of big companies are doing away with performance reviews. A lot of the big companies are creating their own internal to assess what they want assessed.
Okay.
So I'm going to tell you, the fact is, once again, and I don't mean this as a dodge, but it really comes back to the individual stating what they did, stating the value it delivered, and whether it took an hour for them to do it or 2.5 hours to do it should not be as important to you as an employer. And I know that might drive you crazy, especially if you're paying somebody hourly. But if they did the job and they did it well, and they can verify, prove it, and defend it. And let me go to another place too. Every time I talk about defending an accomplishment, I go deep on this, and this is where this whole process was developed. Because when I worked with job seekers, before, if I took you on, let's say you called me and you wanted me to help you find a job.
Okay.
Before I will even accept you, you're going to have to do a full list of personal best accomplishments. And at your position and your age, I would expect 12 to 15 very best accomplishments. Okay. You're going to have to write these down. I want to know the who, what, where, when, why, and how behind each accomplishment, as well as any value delivered. Now, most people, when I go through that process, they say, thank you very much. I hang up the phone and then I never hear from them again. And that's fine because I cannot be successful with you if you don't do this. Yeah. I take those accomplishments in and I reduce it to a single sentence that I call what and wow. Okay. I was responsible for what that resulted in wow. Now, that is a part of the model for the accomplishments for determining your quotient. Okay. But here's the thing. And the reason, let me finish the punchline here. When I'm working with a job search client, when they have done this list of accomplishments, now you're ready to write the resume. And more importantly, I have prepared you to interview. Everything is top of mind because I made you write it all out, think about it. Yeah. So when somebody gives you some really hard, esoteric question, you can answer that question because you've already done all the homework. So my clients are very, very successful. I can tell you that candidly. That model is what came into developing the quotient, because I found so many people, I know I said this earlier, but I found so many professionals who could tell me what they did. They could not tell me what the value was to the company. And that's when I developed this idea of the quotient. And I realized all the different places it fits. So back to what you're saying, I really don't care if, and this will drive you crazy, and this will drive anybody, especially who pays hourly. Okay. I don't care how many hours you put into the job. What was the net result? What was the effect? Can you defend it? Can you tell me the who, what, where, when, why, and how, and what you anticipate the value is going to be to the organization as a result of that hour you spent or that 2.5 hours? So, and that's, like I said, that's the accomplishments mindset, and that's not easy to get people thinking like that. But I want people to think like that.
Yeah, no, very interesting. So how do I approach that, Rick? Let's say I have a team of sales staff, right? So they get based on commission. They already, they used to getting commissions based on a sales, the deal closed or the activity, right? So I have a lot of other staff, accounting staff or purchasing staff or technical staff. how do you change a mindset? Well, one is a mindset, but how do you develop this value system for these other employees so you can kind of bring everybody on the same page so they get commission based on if they're adding more value to the to the business as well. I think that's where we're getting to. Hey, if you're delivering more value, I need to compensate you. I need to encourage you more. So how do I build a model that everybody's encouraged in a company and they all get bonuses or commissions based on their performance value, so they're all working on the same goals.
I don't know that I would want to put in bonus. Yes. Commissions. No.
Okay.
I wouldn't go there. Commissions, I'd keep that with the salespeople because that is built into the revenue they generate. They get a piece of it. Okay. So that I wouldn't say. And I think if you start having regular paycheck employees on a commission basis, that could get really scary, really hairy. The rest of it, though, is candidly going to be training. And I have developed the first draft of the curriculum for the training for this process. Okay. I'm talking with some people about possibly taking that out to the public. And I actually see two verticals right there because big companies can really afford to do this and are gonna want to do this. Smaller companies and mom and pop shops can't. So the first vertical is corporate training. The second vertical is individual training, where I literally want to invite people to a hotel room on a conference room on a Saturday morning for 4 hours, and we go through the process and train them individually that they can go back and take this. But it's going to require training. It's going to, and honestly, read the book. I don't know when this is going to air. I wish we had done this a month ago, so it'd be airing right now because the book is available right now at a deep discount by Simon & Schuster on Amazon, but that's not going to be available right now. So, but the book's not expensive. It's $18.95, I think, is retail.
Yeah, we'll include a link below the video as well, so people can go get a copy of the book as well.
Yeah, they can go to rickgillis.com. They can go to Amazon and look up my name, and they'll see the book. It's Leveling the Playing Field. But I really think people are going to have to study a little bit or attend a class. And the thing, Jeremy, this is not a difficult concept to understand. And I know you know that because I know that you yourself, as you told me earlier, just received the book yourself and you've gone through it already or even just a quick glance. Yeah. I tell people if you read the introduction, the foreword, and the first 10 pages, which includes the first Q study, you'll know everything about how this works. Now, the one thing you probably noticed, the first 60% of the book, I wrote it for the individual worker. The last 35-40% was written for enterprise. And the reason I say that is because in that early 60%, I did not include overhead in the discussion. And the reason is employees don't even realize how much money it takes just to turn on the lights. They don't. They don't have a clue. They don't realize what janitorial costs to come in at night and clean the place and all those other things that employers pay for. So I didn't want to muddy that message in the front of the book talking to employees. So I just kept it straight line. But at that 65-70% part of the book, I introduced overhead expenses, explain why I did not talk about it, and then go forward. Because when I'm telling you a Q=1 means you're making the cut, you're keeping your job, it's probably more like a Q=5. You probably got to generate at least 5 times your revenue to pay for all the things, health insurance, income taxes, all those things we have to pay, plus facilities and everything else. So my numbers are subject and I expect them to be modified over time. I'm fine with that. But I think people who are much smarter than me can do that and make it a better product than what I offered initially. I do think that. Okay.
From your experience, Rick, though, for years' experience, what do you think the value should be? Should be 5 times, as you mentioned, that approximately that's where business leaders should focus on, that they should be getting 5 times from a staff, or it's going to vary based on what area they work in. There's so many different variables, but generally speaking, and a rule of thumb, 5 times should be the rule.
You know what? I'm comfortable saying 5 times. But let me give you an example. While I was writing the book, one of my closest friends is a chemist, researching cancer for 35-36 years. And he told me, and this man has spent millions and millions of dollars in research, him and his team. And these are researchers interacting all over the world. And he told me candidly that they had moved the needle 5 degrees in all these years. That was 23 years of research. And he figured it was $33 million he had been spending over those years. And he said they had moved the needle 5%. There's no quotient there. That is so far negative, you can't even take it based on what he was paid. He's got no return. Yeah. So there are subject places where you have to think like that. Then there's other places where absolutely people are generating so much value. And let's face it, there has to be a lot of value being delivered or companies wouldn't stay in business, you know? Yeah. So there's still a lot of discussions to be held by people much smarter than me. Probably me more like you and your counterparts should be talking about this, and let me sit in the back corner of the room and listen and pay attention and learn something from you guys.
Yeah, and I think one of the area where it is going to be how do we build a value, definitely on a saving money for company, you know. But one thing you mentioned, but other part is Rick, is, as you know, the biggest expense for every business is going to be payroll, no matter how you look at it, right? The payroll is the biggest expense, you know, compared to all other expenses in a business, right? So that is a much bigger cost. So you know, saving money on a payroll definitely is a key to you know, calculated value. But other side of that is Rick, also, I'm not sure if you I'd like to get your thoughts on it, because that's something applied to my business quite a bit, is a process automation, or simply automating business process. You know, if an employee goes out and it finds a way, hey, how can I automate this business process? And I can add value to the company itself, right? So now you can take that business process and say, listen, I was doing the manual way of this, right? You know, I was writing a piece of paper before, now it's all digital. I save so much time, right? So how do you take a look at all the business process one employee added to the business, and how much time he saved, and all the money he saved, or generate more revenue? I think other area is, you know, automation and a business process. That's where technology comes in, and I think we spend a lot of time with the business leaders in that area. I think that's another way of looking at it and calculating the value from employees, that if they simply automated some of the process for you.
You know what? You're talking in a space that I don't even understand, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But I don't think it would be that difficult. I think what you need to do is kind of stand back and look at what was accomplished, look at how much money was put into it, paying those people that developed the processes, and then doing the flip side and saying, okay, that saved the work of 5 different people. That's 5 salaries you just eliminated. Mm-hmm. And it's a one-time buy of, let's just make up a number, $10,000 to implement this widget, this piece of software, and you save 5 payrolls on that space. So I don't think it's that hard to calculate, but I'm not the right person to know that. I do think now that you know more about what we're talking about, and now that you've been introduced to this, because candidly, Jermeet, I have not spoken to that many professionals yet, principally because it was COVID. You know, my speaking schedule just came to a dead stop for the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. I've just had 2 speaking engagements in the last 2 weeks out of Houston, where I traveled. I was speaking somewhere Monday. Matter of fact, it was a human resources organization, and speaking is starting to come up. But I've got to share this message much wider before it's going to happen. But I think, honestly, people like you are going to automate this process. I don't think it's that difficult, but I do think the hardest part, candidly, is getting people to embrace the mindset that it's okay, not just okay, it's imperative they start thinking about the value they deliver. Mm-hmm. Not just that I go to work and I put in 8 hours, whether I do it at home or whether I do it at an office, but that 8 hours, what does that mean? And here's the thing, everything you just said, everything you just mentioned about payroll being your biggest expense, do your employees know that? Do they really know that? I don't think they do. And do they know what's next? Do they know facilities? Do they know furniture? Do they know overhead? Do they know the cost of electricity? I've been working for myself for so long that I just candidly, I engage all this stuff because it's in my house payments and all the utilities and stuff. But I remember, one thing you don't know about me is prior to my getting into that job board business, I used to manage office buildings. I had 14 office buildings on 20 acres of property. Wow. I used to lease this property. Well, I paid all the utilities for 14 buildings. I maintained the premises, the roofs, the plumbing, the security, the janitorial. And you had a problem, you called me, I got it taken care of. And I had a 94 to 96% occupancy rate in that 440 some thousand square feet that I managed. So everything you're talking about, I used to live that on a monthly basis. I went through all those numbers. And candidly, interestingly, my payroll was very small for that because most of it was contracted. I contracted janitorial, I contracted the engineers, I contracted HVAC maintenance and stuff.
Okay.
Very, very expensive. But at the end of the day, if I didn't squeak out a profit from all those rents that were pre-negotiated, I had to live with them no matter what for anywhere from 1 year to 3 years to 5 years. If I did that badly, I wasn't making any money. So, that particular lease wouldn't make any money. My point is, this is what the average Joe on the street, Joe and Jill, needs to start thinking, that there is cause and effect to what they do. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a very big ask of an employee who's regularly, especially younger people, who just want to go to work, get some money, go out, go have some fun, go travel, go back to work. But when you start hitting that 30, 35, especially families, things change. And we start hitting 40, 45, 50 years old, the dynamics change of what you're thinking about. I think we need to mature younger employees faster, in the sense that I want them thinking about this stuff. Not that they have to live and die by it, but thinking about it. But also, too, those young people who start businesses on their own, they have to go through this same model, the same model you're doing, you live with daily.
Yeah. But, it's interesting that a lot of companies I know, a lot of business owners, especially with what we've gone through for the last couple of years, they're also looking to extend their teams to hire people overseas. They could be different country, they could be different, provinces. Because if you're going to work remotely, it doesn't matter where you are, right? So they can, and it allows a business owner to hire people from a bigger pool as well, right? So now you have a bigger skill pool that you can hire people from. But if you go with your value system, not only you can assess the employee that in your same area, but it could be overseas, and you can assess them the same way with the value system, no matter where they are. So it's the same thing can apply to people no matter where they are in a world.
No question about it. And sir, you need to write that book. You need to be my co-author on that book right there. I seriously do want to develop a series of books behind this for different verticals. And that's a very great, that's the first time anybody's even mentioned that idea to me. But you're absolutely, completely right. And those people are working at, I guess, minimum standards and delivering tremendous value, or it wouldn't be successful. No question about it. Yeah. So I can't imagine what their quotients would look like. Yeah. They might have quotients of 200, 100 and a half. Could be delivering, where somebody locally has a quotient of 7 or 8 or 9.
You got it. It doesn't matter. They're in India, China, wherever they are. You get a foreign worker and you put a value system on it, definitely, and you can use that value system many different ways. For negotiate their salary or whatever you want to do. And even sitting in the same room in the same area, you can still approach the same way.
I like the way you're thinking. You're exactly right.
But I know a lot of business leaders, Rick, at this as a time, they're trying to find a new ways of measuring, staff and value. Simply because I know that old way of doing it by the clock is no longer relevant. So, in a hybrid environment where we are right now, I know business leaders are struggling to figure out, if they want to go with the activities and the measurement of tasks, they have to change a lot of system to accommodate that work as well, right? So, there's a lot of system they have to change. But this is probably easy way out for them to do that, measuring by the value instead of changing all their systems and trying to find out how do I measure the workload that I'm giving to the people, right?
I agree, and I appreciate everything you're saying. God, I want you to work for me.
Okay.
I mean, no, you're right, though. You're absolutely right. It's really a matter of return for whatever it is you're paying. It's a return of value. That's what it's about. And I think before we were having this discussion, it's always been a matter of, we negotiated this rate, I'm going to pay you this much, fingers crossed I get back what I think I'm going to get back from this person. Yeah. I mean, how many times have you made a bad hire that you thought was the bomb, and you put a bonus or some kind of a signing bonus in this person's hand to find out there was nothing delivered, that at the end of a month, 3 months, 6 months, the whole thing collapsed because it was no good. It happens all the time in sports and all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing exactly in people, but there's no question. And I'll tell you what, one of the things, remember, this whole model came from my helping people locate and find their next job. If more people are coming to the employment line to apply for a job, and they can disclose that on their last position, they had a quotient of 27.6, that's really good. Tell me how you did that. Now, once again, who, what, where, when, why, and how, and the valuations. This could change. And honestly, Jeremy, your got me thinking. I need to go write another book now.
Yeah.
This is the way to go interview. This is the way for a person to go into the interview and say, and this is what I've always taught people, but to put it across the board really does change the dynamic. In other words, I don't want to even interview you if you can't come in and tell me what your quotient was on your last job. Did you deliver 3 times your pay, or 5 times, or 27 times? And how did you do that? Show me how you did that.
Yeah, definitely. It will help in a recruiting process. But Rick, you can take it a couple steps further. This one, if you take it a step, simply say, listen, now, I'm running a company, and some sales company come to me and say, listen, I want to train your people on a sales. I want to sell you this sales training program. Sure, you can sell me, but here's my quotient value for all my employees. If this doesn't go up, I'm not paying you for the sales training. So how much value can you add on can you make my people more productive? Can you increase their value? If you're not doing that, so what do you have achieved so far, right? So you can start assessing the training, and you're paying your consultants and vendors that way as well. So if they're increasing a value in your company, your staff's value going up, then it's good. You can pay them whatever they want, but otherwise you can start questioning and start evaluating the training as well.
I appreciate that. I appreciate what you just said too. You can start paying them whatever they want, as long as they can justify how they're delivering value back to you. How does that model work? And I did say this in the book, and I think I just said it myself. I'm probably repeating myself, but big data and artificial intelligence are going to be able to use the quotient. There's no doubt in my mind. Everything you're talking about right here is, this is just us talking over a beer. This is not a big deal. We're not trying to, we're not trying to brainstorm this idea. We're just talking about it. Imagine if brainstorming starts happening. And that is what I hope for it to happen with this whole thing. I do want this thing to get bigger. And, and candidly, I do appreciate very much you're having me here to discuss this, because I've been talking with a lot of HR professionals. I've been talking with smaller companies, and to talk with you, who's in the environment you live in, you're asking different questions. And quite frankly, you painted me into a corner a couple of times. I'm really having to think. And I appreciate that. That's really wonderful. I can't answer everything because I'm just not as well educated as probably you are. But I do know the fundamentals here do work across the board. Yeah, I'm very comfortable in saying that.
Yeah, no, you have a lot of industry, wealth of knowledge in hiring business and recruiting business that definitely reflect in a book as well. That's definitely the big asset. So, how big do you think the mindset change is? Because this is a big mindset change, right? We've been doing different ways. So let's talk about the mindset. How big is the mindset change, and what do you think that obstacles people are gonna face when they start looking into different way of assessing people or calculating values? What do you think the biggest challenges they're going to face?
Overcoming the fear the employee is going to have. Okay. Overcoming the fear. And anytime there is a new model, I'm old enough to remember, and this will be fun. You probably won't even know what I'm talking about. Okay. I was in grade school or middle school when we moved from arithmetic to the new math. Okay. And honestly, I don't even know what that means because I don't remember what was there before. Okay. But it was a mind shift. And I remember everybody going, ooh and ah, we're all afraid. We were afraid of this new math. And it's just math. It's just math. That's all this is. And really what this is about, it's just value. It's just value. But nobody who has a paycheck, who receives a paycheck, has ever been asked to defend that value before. And I don't think that's a stretch. Now, the thing is, the reason for that, though, is because there's never been a way prior to this to measure the value. I'll tell you what, Jeremy, another story I'll tell you when I first had this idea, and I can tell you, I was riding my bicycle on the street over from my house, and I literally stopped because I saw this entire visual instantly. The next morning, I called a recently retired CFO friend of mine. He had been the chief financial officer at one of the biggest hospital groups here in Houston. Okay. He had 38 entities under his umbrella. This man was really the real deal. And he had retired, and I called him up and I said, Cliff, how do you determine the value of an individual that receives a paycheck? Mm-hmm. He says, you can't. And I said, wait a minute, you're a CFO, you've got thousands of employees, and you're telling me you cannot figure out the value of an employee. He said, there's no process in the model. And I said, really? And so I said, so how do you figure out what to pay somebody? He said, well, let me give you the closest we can get. And he used exactly a surgical suite as an example.
Yeah.
He said, let's say you have a $35 an hour orderly in a surgical suite, and you have a $1,000 an hour surgeon and everything in between, okay? And he said, so we have 11 people working in that surgical suite. We know the cost of the facility. We know the cost of the supplies, the medical, and then we add in all these salaries. But at the end of the day, we take that number, that total, and we divide it by 11 to attribute value. And I said, so you're telling me that $35 an hour orderly is valued the same as that $1,000 an hour surgeon? And he said, yes, in the books. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's not even close to accurate. And so that has been the problem up till now, up till the quotient, that you had no way of measuring this. Now, once again, and I've said this twice already, but I can't say it hard enough or impact it enough. This is up to the individual to do the heavy lifting. They have to pay attention. One of the things that I insist with the people I work with and I'm training and teaching is that I suggest, but they should keep a daily calendar. At the end of the day, take 3 or 4 minutes as you're leaving and just go to your calendar, your Outlook, whatever you're using, and make a note of what you did today. Because here's the thing, accomplishments do not happen, boom. Accomplishments start here and they take time to get over to happen. So as you make notes, and let's for instance say, you make a note that say, save $3,000 today, $3,000, save $3,000 an hour today in closing the books, whatever. Make a little note of that. Leave it. Or save, like I told you earlier, the example, save 15 minutes closing the books today, may save money in the future. Boom. Make little notes, just little notes. Don't write a biography, no diary. It's just make little notes. I've been doing this for myself for years. I especially go back periodically and I look at my client lists, and I don't keep these on a written list. I keep them in my calendar, and I go back and I look, whoa, there's Jeremy Judge. Wow, that guy's now the CEO of, but when he met me, he was a vice president at. And it takes time for these. Accomplishments happen over time. So all you need to do is make little notes. If there's an email that has something relevant in it, save it, copy it, save it in the calendar. But this is the easiest way to be able to go back and look at this. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if that's one of the failings of annual reports, annual reviews, who remembers all the stuff they did? Yeah, we did the first year lineup. We sat down with the boss and we set our goals. And we did the mid-year assessment where we go, we're going to review the goals and where are we at? And then we do the end-of-year assessment. But there's all these little other things that happened along the way that we didn't even think about that added value. And I'll tell you the other thing too, Jeremy, that I think is important. This is a great way for that quiet performer who doesn't make a lot of noise to get noticed. Because it's always that quiet person that somehow gets eliminated because they had no personality or whatever. And then you find out after you got rid of that person that it took 3 people. You had to hire 3 people to replace that one person because they were doing such good work. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, definitely that happens all the time, right? So we think that persons are doing, just because the person's not making a noise, you just don't know how much work they're putting out. And when you replace them, it's going to take multiple people to replace the person.
And I've seen that happen several times. And I'll tell you what, now that should go away with this whole COVID thing and people working remotely. That should go away. We're really going to see who's delivering and who's not. Okay. But nevertheless, I think the main thing here is, and I do appreciate very much you having me on your podcast, because I want to get the word out here that there is another way to measure somebody's value, but they're going to have to be integrally involved in that process. They need to be taught how to do it. And once they do it and we pass a basic test, basic assessment, they should become responsible for that. And I would think over the course of 3 to 6 months, somebody could get very, very good at paying attention to what they're doing, especially when they realize it means money.
Yeah.
Money will motivate people. Yeah. It's the only thing that does.
I think it's one of those concepts it has to be driven by business leaders. Business leaders gotta get a hold of your book. They gotta go through it. They gotta educate themselves, and then they can start passing that on to the staff and get buy-in. But it has to start from business leaders. I know it's a new concept. I know the book just came out a little while ago. We may not have the data, but I wanted to ask you: do you see that companies who are deployed, people who embrace the idea, they ran with it, have you seen the some sort of mistakes they've been making, and so people who are gonna start using it, they can avoid some of those mistakes? Do we have that kind of feedback yet from people? Do we have any
No, sir.
data?
It's too early for that. And that's a
Okay.
great question. And see, you as a business manager, operator would ask that question. That's a great question. I don't have that yet. Certainly, there's got to be some places, I would think, just off the top of my head, I would think the principal problem with this is going to be pushback by the employees. And that one person I told you about who has embraced the company, the small consulting company in Tennessee, she told me, the CEO told me, that at the very lowest levels, these people don't really know why they're doing it, but they're required to do it. It's you don't do it, you don't keep your job kind of thing. But as you move up, she said, my senior managers really get it, and the mid managers are starting to understand it better. But you know what? The thing is, bottom line, this is not difficult to do. That's the fundamental thing. Once you get in that mindset, it's just like keeping appointments in your calendar. It's just a matter of tracking what you do as you do it. And that's my definition for the accomplishments mindset. Pay attention to what you do as you do it. We don't even remember what we had for lunch yesterday. You think I'm going to be able to tell you what I did at 3:30 yesterday when I saved the company $15,000?
Yeah.
Maybe, probably not.
Yeah.
Then more importantly, I probably didn't realize I saved the company $15,000. By the way, if you'll go in and read Q study number 13 in the book, it's a guy named Brad, commercial real estate. That's actually my story. Brad was my supervisor's name, and I really adored the man. He passed away many years ago, but he was a hell of a mentor to me. So I use his name, Brad, but that's actually my story. I saved my real estate company millions of dollars by solving a problem that I had that I didn't know the rest of the company had. And I didn't even remember this until 10 years after the fact. I was working with another client, and all of a sudden I went, whoa, I did this. And when I went back and looked at it, I realized I saved my company between $1.5 and $2.5 million a year in legal expenses by coming up with a solution to an issue that came up in my office. And I never got a bonus. I never got a promotion. I never got a raise. And I'm not complaining. I was a company man. I got my 3% raise that year. I got my 3% bonus. I was happy. Everything was fine. But later on, I went, I saved these guys between $1 million and $2.5 million bucks. I should have gotten at least, I don't know, 0.01%, a $15,000 bonus. I didn't get anything for that. But it was my problem. It was not their problem. It was my problem because I didn't know to stand up and defend myself for that. And that's one of the things that I call the accomplishments mindset. Pay attention.
Yeah. Definitely paying attention is going to be key in this. But definitely, over the time, when people start deploying this concept and the feedback, you mentioned one example where, they can enforce on, the staff. So they have to use the system. But, I'm sure there's going to be, people in the management are more creative how to convince their staff to use it, right? So
yes.
Those stories will probably make a lot more sense together over the time. Forcing is one thing, but, can we encourage them to use it different ways? Can you influence them into using it different way? Can we make it in such a way that it's more beneficial to them, to not to employer and educate them that way so they can start using it? I think there's going to be so many stories. Those stories, when you have those stories, I think that it will make a lot more sense for businesses. They can see that, hey, this company had this challenge and they got over this challenge by doing this.
Yes, it's the carrot instead of the stick.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is what you're saying, and I do appreciate that. And you know what? That's a natural. The more value they're delivering, the more appreciation they should see.
Yeah.
Whether that's in time off, and that's in money, that's in travel, that's in whatever kind of gifts. But yeah, no question about that.
Okay. So where can business leaders start? I think the picking up your book is a first step. Just going through the concept is the first one. Where else they can get help? Business leaders who like the concept. Where else they can get help on this, Rick? Besides just reading this book from you.
You know what? The only thing I can tell them is to reach out to me personally if they'd like. It's rickgillis.com. That's my website. I do have some stuff on there. I have this podcast when it's published will be on my. I'll want a copy so I can put it up there.
Sure.
I'm putting those on there, and this discussion has gone deeper in business than most of my other discussions have, and I appreciate that very much from you.
Thank you.
I like it a lot. You really hadn't got me thinking, which I also love that a lot. I am going to be writing a second book, not taking it away from the pay parity thing. That's not going to be the first phase. That's going to be helping business advance using the Quotient model. And then the end of it will be, oh, and by the way, you can create pay parity by this, because this does create pay parity naturally.
Yeah.
You know, if you're paying your best people the best possible pay you can, the rest of them are going to fall away. And I don't care if they're black, white, male, female, it doesn't make any difference. Your best people are going to be the ones performing. And that's in my case, in my mind, that's business nirvana.
Yeah.
That's what you want. That's what any employer wants.
Well, not only you want, but you want to promote these people. You want to spend more money on these people. You want to get them to deliver more value. Because these are people who will follow you and they will listen to you. They will make a best use of the training you're going to provide. So if I'm an employer and I see, hey, where I want to spend more time, where I want to invest my time into people, do I want to invest on somebody who has a value of 1 or 2, or do I want to invest more time on somebody delivering value of 10, 11? What do I see my time's more worth it, right? So definitely when business leaders are making decisions, it's going to be a tool for them to find out where you want to invest more time.
Yeah, and you're just going to have to give your younger workers time to get up to speed with tracking their accomplishments. Yeah. And that may take supervisors and mentors above them pointing out those things they did. Did you happen to think when you did that this also occurred? No, I didn't. Wow, thank you for that. So it's going to be some mentorship that's going to be required to get to that space. I really hope at one point this becomes a college course. I really do. Yeah. For new graduates coming out of school should have this kind of mentality. Yeah, it's good for everybody.
Yeah, no, very interesting. Definitely, I was, very interesting concept. I enjoyed it. So below this video, I'm going to include a link to your book as well. I'm going to include a link to your, website as well. And, I definitely encourage business leaders, to go get a copy of your book. Take a look at the concept. It will definitely give you a different perspective on apparel or on a revenue, and reach out to you for conversation. Right? I'm going to include your link to your website. They can click a button. They can reach out to you, and I will say reach out. Connect with you for discussion, and who knows where the discussion can lead, and they can draw a lot of value from a conversation.
Yeah, as well as LinkedIn. If you want to put my LinkedIn on there, you have my permission to do that. I'd appreciate that as well. That's my primary social media. I have a bunch of social media, but LinkedIn is where I live.
I see. So that's probably the main, the easy way to connect with you, I guess, on our LinkedIn as well, because we connected on a LinkedIn, right?
Yes, we did. That's how we met, right? Okay. We can do LinkedIn, or you can send it to my website. It makes no difference. I direct people both directions.
Good stuff. Yeah, well, I want to
thank you so much, man.
I want to appreciate your time. Thank you so much for spending time with me, educating me, and sharing your book. I'm looking forward to sharing this with the audience, and I think people are going to draw a lot of value from our discussion as well. Yeah,
but I look forward to talking with you more and more because, like I said, God, you've got me thinking. I'm not going to sleep tonight. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It's really,
no worry. Work on the next book, and hopefully soon we'll talk again, and we'll talk about this book in more detail. And at that point, you're going to have more feedback from your clients as well who deploy the idea, so we can use that idea and share that with the audience as well, right? So.
Best practices.
Best practices. You got it. So looking forward to the best practices, and all the best with the books. And thank you so much for spending time with me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Hi there. Thank you so much for investing time with us and watching this video. Hope you enjoyed this discussion. For next episode, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and send your feedback. Until next time, have yourself a great day. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.